I've always believed that a home is more than walls and windows. It's where your soul breathes. Mine sat on the corner of Maple Street, a little white house with blue shutters and a porch swing that creaked like an old friend. I bought it when I was 28, back when I thought love could fix everything. It couldn't, but that house sure tried to. My name is Martha Jensen, and I've lived in this small town of Brooksville for nearly 30 years. Folks around here know me as the Pie Lady, the one who brings apple cobblers to church events and always remembers birthdays. I like it that way, quiet, simple, known. I raised my daughter Emily in that house. Her laughter once filled every room. She was the light of my life, sharp, beautiful, ambitious. The kind of girl who always wanted more than this town could give. But as she grew, the warmth between us cooled. She began to see my simple life as something to escape, not cherish. I never blamed her for wanting more. I just wished she could see how much this house meant to me, how much we meant to me. I still remember the day we painted the living room. Emily was 12, and I had saved up for weeks to buy the yellow paint she wanted. Sunny Morning, it was called. She said it made her feel like the house smiled. We got paint on our clothes, in our hair, even on the dog. I can still hear her giggles echoing off the walls. But those giggles faded as she grew older. College came, and then city life swept her away. She rarely called unless she needed something: money, advice, or a favor. I gave all three, because that's what mothers do. Her father, Tom, had left long before. He was a kind man once before he lost himself in drink and dreams that never came true. I built that house up again after he left, one paycheck, one nail, one prayer at a time. So yes, that house wasn't just a roof over my head. It was my victory, my proof that I could stand again after being broken. The years went by and the town changed. New families moved in, old ones faded away. But my house stayed the same. The creaky porch, the overgrown lilacs by the gate. It all held the story of my life. Then came last winter. It was a cold one, sharp winds, frozen pipes, and a cough I couldn't shake. I thought it was just the flu. But when the fever hit and I couldn't stand, my neighbor Helen found me on the kitchen floor. Next thing I knew, I was in the hospital, tubes in my arm, the steady beep of machines around me. At first, I wasn't scared. I figured I'd be out in a few days. But days turned into weeks, and the doctors started using words like infection and observation period. Emily called once or twice. She said she was so busy, but promised to check on the house. I told her where the spare key was, and I remember saying, "Make sure the porch plants get water. They're like me. If they dry up, they're done for." She laughed. "Sure, Mom. I'll take care of it." If only I knew what take care of it meant to her. The nurses were kind. They said I reminded them of their grandmas. I crocheted little squares for the newborn ward and made friends with a man down the hall who was recovering from surgery. But every night I missed my bed. The smell of cinnamon candles, the sound of rain on my porch roof. My home wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Weeks turned to months. My strength came back slowly, but so did my worries. My phone battery had died long ago, and I couldn't reach Emily. She hadn't visited in almost 3 weeks. That wasn't like her. Not when she thought I might leave her an inheritance someday. I told myself she was busy, but something deep inside whispered that something was wrong. Then one morning, Nurse Abby came in with a look I didn't like. "Mrs. Jensen," she said softly, "your daughter just called. She said she's handling your house situation. Do you want me to get details?" "My house situation?" I asked, my chest tightening. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "I don't know exactly, but she said something about selling property to cover your bills." My world froze. When you've built your entire life around something, sacrificed years, sweat, and memories, and someone says it's being sold without your say-so, your soul screams. I could barely breathe. "That can't be," I whispered. "My name's still on that deed." Abby looked at me, confused. Maybe she's just handling paperwork. But I knew my daughter, and I knew she had always thought of my home as wasted potential. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, tears slipping quietly into my pillow. Had I really raised someone who could do that to me? Or had I been so blinded by love that I never saw her greed growing? When I was finally discharged, the doctor said I needed rest and someone to help me at home. I nodded, pretending I had someone waiting, but I knew the truth. I was going home alone. I took a cab back to Maple Street. The moment I turned the corner, my heart stopped. There was a "for sale" sign in my yard, fresh, bright, and bold like a slap to the face. I stumbled out of the cab, ignoring the driver's confused look. My porch swing was gone. The flower pots I'd cared for were missing. Even the old rocking chair Tom built me, gone. And then I saw it. Strangers walking through my living room window, pointing, smiling, discussing my kitchen counters. I could barely speak. My knees gave way and I sat on the curb, staring at the life I'd built, stripped bare, priced, and sold like it was nothing. I called Emily over and over. No answer. Finally, she texted, "Mom, please don't be upset. It was the best decision. You couldn't live there alone anymore. We needed to handle things before it got worse. I'll explain soon." Handle things? She'd sold my home while I was lying in a hospital bed, thinking of her as my only child, my only reason to keep fighting. I felt something inside me harden that day, something deep and unbreakable. That night, I sat in Helen's kitchen, holding a cup of tea I couldn't drink. She was furious on my behalf. "Martha, you can't let her do this. That's your property." I nodded slowly. "She thinks I'm weak. She thinks I'll just let it happen." Helen leaned forward. "What are you going to do?" I smiled through the tears. She may have forgotten, but I haven't. My name's still on that deed. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't done yet. When I woke up the next morning in Helen's guest room, sunlight slipped through lace curtains, gentle as a sigh. But inside me, there was nothing gentle left. I'd spent the night replaying every memory of Emily, the birthdays, the scraped knees, the bedtime stories, and wondering where it had all gone wrong. I'd built that girl's world out of love, and now she'd sold mine out from under me. Helen tried to get me to eat something, but the toast turned to sawdust in my mouth. "I'll go to the courthouse today," I said quietly. She frowned. "You're not strong enough to be running around, Martha. Let me go with you." But I shook my head. This is something I have to see for myself. So, I put on my old blue coat, the one Emily bought me years ago for Mother's Day, and stepped outside. The cold air bit my cheeks awake. Maple Street looked the same, yet different. My neighbors waved hesitantly, whispering after I passed. News traveled fast in small towns. Everyone knew what Emily had done before I did. At the courthouse, the clerk pulled up the property records. 214 Maple Street, he murmured, typing. "Looks like the sale went through last month." "Last month?" I whispered. "I was in the hospital then." He glanced up at me, sympathetic but detached. The kind of look people give when they're used to seeing heartbreak from behind a counter. "Says here the property was transferred to a Mr. and Mrs. Carter. Cash purchase." "Transferred?" I asked. "That can't be right. My name is still on that deed. I never signed anything." He turned the screen toward me. "There are signatures here, ma'am." I leaned in. My eyes aren't as sharp as they used to be, but I could still tell a fake when I saw one. The scrawl beside my printed name was not mine. "That's not my signature," I said, voice trembling. He hesitated. "You might want to take this to a lawyer." I nodded, clutching the printed copy of the record like a lifeline. The world outside blurred. All I could think was, my daughter forged my name. I walked slowly to the bus stop, too proud to call Helen for a ride. My hands shook as I read the paper again and again. I remembered when Emily was little, how she'd steal my lipstick and sign her name on napkins, pretending to be a fancy lady. Now she'd forged my name for real and taken my house with it. By the time I got home to Helen's, she was waiting by the door. "Well?" she asked. I handed her the papers. She read them, her face growing redder by the second. "She forged you, Martha. That's illegal." I sat down hard on the sofa. "I know, but she's my daughter." Helen crossed her arms. "That doesn't mean she can walk all over you." I stared out the window at the maple trees swaying in the wind. "No, it doesn't. But I need to know why she did it before I do anything. I need to hear it. From her." That evening, I finally got a text from Emily. "Mom, I'll come by tomorrow. We need to talk." I didn't sleep that night. I waited, angry, anxious, heartbroken. I didn't know which version of her would walk through that door, my little girl, or the stranger who sold my life away. The next afternoon, she arrived in a shiny car I'd never seen before. Hair perfect, clothes crisp, perfume too strong. She looked like a city woman visiting her past, not a daughter coming home. "Mom," she said, stepping in like she still belonged. "You look tired." I smiled thinly. "That's what happens when your child sells your home behind your back." Her face tightened. "I did it for you." "For me?" I asked quietly. "Yes," she said, voice too quick. "You were sick, Mom. You could have died in that hospital. That house was old, falling apart, full of memories you couldn't handle anymore. I found a buyer who paid cash. It covered your bills and gave us both a fresh start." "Us?" I asked. She hesitated. "Well, the sale helped with my expenses too. I was handling everything, Mom. Your hospital, your insurance mess. Someone had to keep things moving." I stared at her, searching for the little girl I once knew. "You forged my name, Emily." Her eyes flashed. "I didn't forge it, I just signed it for you. You were too sick to handle paperwork." "That's a crime," I said softly. Her chin lifted. "It's family, Mom. Don't be dramatic." I looked at her, really looked. She was the same girl who once cried over a broken doll, who used to sneak into my bed during thunderstorms. But now there was steel in her eyes, cold, shiny, and unfamiliar. "Where are my things?" I asked. "The furniture, the pictures, Tom's tools?" "They're in storage," she said briskly. "Don't worry, I took care of everything." "Where's the key?" "To what?" "To my house." She sighed, like she was talking to a stubborn child. "Mom, please. The sale's final. The new owners move in next week. You'll stay with Mrs. Collins for now, okay? Maybe later we can find a nice apartment closer to town." A nice apartment. As if my life could be packed into 4 rooms and a hallway. I nodded slowly. "All right, Emily, I see." Her face softened. "Good, I knew you'd understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly." After she left, Helen came out from the kitchen, arms crossed. "I heard everything," she said. "She's lying through her teeth." I sighed. "I know. But I can't just storm into court with nothing but anger. She thinks I'm weak. Let her think that." Helen frowned. "What are you planning?" I looked at the deed copy on the table. "Something my daughter forgot. This town may be small, but so is the world when truth comes knocking. The next week, I met with an old friend, Carl Peterson, a retired lawyer who'd handled my property papers decades ago. He still kept an office above the bakery, smelled like coffee and dust, and had a voice rough as gravel. "Good to see you, Martha," he said. "Sorry it's under bad circumstances." I handed him the papers. "I need to know if this sale is legal." He put on his glasses, squinting at the forged signature. "Nope, not a chance. If your name's on the deed, your approval's required for transfer. Looks like someone pulled a fast one using a power of attorney. See this line?" He pointed to a paragraph I hadn't noticed. "Temporary guardianship during hospitalization." "She filed for this," he said. "Said you were incapacitated." I blinked. "Can she do that?" "Only with proof, and only if you were mentally unfit to decide for yourself. But you were conscious, right?" "Completely." He leaned back, shaking his head. "Then we've got her. She committed fraud." My hands trembled, half from shock, half from relief. Carl explained that I could challenge the sale and freeze the property until the court reviewed ownership. It would take weeks, maybe months, but justice had patience, even when hearts didn't. He offered to file the first motion that very day. As I left his office, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: strength. For too long, I'd let my daughter's choices define me, but not anymore. That night, Emily called again. "Mom, I hope you're not still angry," she began, her tone sweet and shallow. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm patient." She laughed nervously. "That's good. Look, I've been meaning to tell you. I put some of the sale money aside for your care. We'll sort everything out once the buyers settle in." "That's thoughtful," I replied. "You must be proud of how fast you handled everything." There was a pause. "Mom, why do you sound like that?" "Like what?" "Calm." I smiled to myself. "Because calm means I'm planning." The next few weeks were quiet. Emily avoided town, thinking I'd settled. The Carters, the new buyers, began renovations, unaware of the legal freeze Carl had filed. Every nail they hammered into my walls only strengthened my resolve. I watched from across the street sometimes, my heart breaking but steady. Helen worried. "This must be torture, Martha." I shook my head. "No, dear, it's medicine. Sometimes healing comes with a little pain." One evening, I received a letter from Carl. Inside was confirmation from the county clerk. Property title dispute accepted for review. Sale suspended. It felt like the first crack of dawn after a long, dark night. The next morning, Emily showed up unannounced, her face pale, her confidence cracked. "Mom," she said, slamming the paper on the table. "What is this? The buyers called." "Me? They can't move in." "You filed something against the sale?" I looked up from my tea. "I did." "You can't do that. You don't understand how complicated—" "Actually, I do," I interrupted. "I built that house, Emily. I raised you in it, and I never gave anyone permission to take it from me." Her voice rose. "You're being ridiculous. Do you want me to lose everything?" "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "Just the things you stole." She froze, eyes wide. "I did it for us," she whispered again, voice cracking this time. "No," I said, standing. "You did it for you, and now you'll see what happens when truth comes home." That night, as I sat on Helen's porch, watching the sunset bleed across the sky, I felt a strange peace. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of losing everything, because I'd already lost it once and survived. The house wasn't just mine by paper. It was mine by memory, by heart, by the quiet endurance of years. And no signature, real or forged, could ever erase that. I whispered to the fading light, "She doesn't know yet. My name's still on it, and it always will be." I used to think hospitals were places of healing. Now I know they can also be where trust goes to die. When I first got sick, it started small. Just a cough that wouldn't quit, a little dizziness when I stood too fast. I ignored it, of course. That's what mothers do. We think we're too busy, too needed, to be sick. Then one icy morning, my world tilted. I remember reaching for the kettle, hearing a loud crash, and then darkness. When I woke up, I was in a white room that smelled like bleach and worry. My neighbor Helen was sitting by my side, eyes puffy from crying. "You gave us a scare," she said softly. "They said it was pneumonia. You need rest." I nodded, trying to breathe through the oxygen tube in my nose. "Did you call Emily?" I asked. Helen hesitated. "I did. She's on her way." I smiled weakly. "Good." Back then, I still believed my daughter would come running. I still thought love meant something that couldn't be sold. Emily arrived later that night, heels clicking, perfume flooding the room. She looked out of place in the old hospital, like a magazine cutout pasted into a fading picture. "Mom," she said, forcing a bright smile, "you scared me." I laughed weakly. "Guess I'm still full of surprises." She sat by my bed, scrolling on her phone between glances at the monitors. "You're going to be fine," she said. "The doctor said you just need antibiotics and time." "I'm too stubborn to die before finishing that garden fence," I joked. But behind my smile, I could see her unease, like she was already somewhere else. Over the next few days, Emily started helping with hospital paperwork. "Mom," she said, "they need your signature for some forms. Insurance, medical release, nothing big." She handed me a clipboard with several sheets. My eyes were foggy from medication, my hands weak. I trusted her. She was my daughter. So I signed. Page after page, signature after signature, never realizing that one of those forms wasn't about medical care. It was about power of attorney. She had slipped it in between harmless documents, all stamped and official-looking. I never saw it clearly. My mind was too tired to question. I remember one afternoon vividly. The doctor came in to discuss my recovery, and Emily stood beside him, arms crossed. "She's doing better," the doctor said. "But she'll need a few more weeks before we discharge her. We just want to make sure her lungs are clear." Emily nodded briskly. "Of course. We'll handle things at home." Then she turned to me. "Mom, while you're resting, I'll take care of the house. Don't worry about anything, okay?" Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I brushed it off. I wanted to believe she was finally stepping up. I didn't know that every visit, every smile, was another brick in her plan. The nurses adored her. "Your daughter's so attentive," they'd say. "You're lucky." Lucky. Yes. Lucky to have my own child quietly plotting to take everything I'd built. Sometimes, when she thought I was asleep, I'd hear her whispering on the phone. "Yeah, the appraisal came back higher than expected," she'd say. "Once the paperwork clears, we'll list it fast. Cash buyers only." At first, I thought she was helping someone else. Then I heard her say, "It's my mom's house." My heart stopped. I wanted to sit up, shout, "What do you mean, your mom's house?" But my body was weak. The fever had drained me of strength. So I lay there listening, pretending to sleep while my world cracked around me. Later, when I gathered enough energy, I asked her casually, "Emily, who were you talking to earlier?" She smiled. "Just a friend from work, Mom. You rest, okay?" Her voice was sweet, too sweet, the kind that hides poison. That night I couldn't sleep. I watched the shadows crawl across the ceiling and realized that trust can be the most dangerous medicine. A week later, a man in a suit visited my hospital room. "Mrs. Jensen," he said politely, "I'm Mr. Carter from Carter Realty. I just wanted to confirm some details about your property before closing. Property? I asked, confused. He smiled. Your daughter's handling the sale on your behalf. Everything looks great. We just need final confirmation that... I didn't let him finish. Sale? What sale? His eyes widened. Oh, I thought you knew. The property on Maple Street. We're scheduled to close next week. The world spun again. My pulse hammered in my ears. I haven't agreed to any sale, I said firmly. You tell whoever's handling it that I'm still the owner. He stammered. But your daughter, she signed... She's not me, I said coldly. And unless you want a lawsuit, you'd better verify those papers. After he left, I called for Nurse Abby. I need my phone, I said. Now. When she brought it, I scrolled through my contacts, my hands shaking. I called Emily, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I texted her. Emily, someone came to the hospital saying my house is being sold. Call me immediately. No response. That silence was louder than any scream. By morning, she arrived, acting surprised. Mom, calm down, she said, smoothing her hair. That realtor shouldn't have come to you. I was handling everything. You signed the power of attorney, remember? I signed hospital papers, I snapped. Not deeds. She sighed. Mom, you're not thinking clearly. You were sick. The doctor said you needed rest, so I took responsibility. I did what was best. What's best for who? I asked quietly. She didn't answer. In the days that followed, she became scarce, fewer. Visits, shorter calls. The nurses noticed. She must be overwhelmed, they said kindly. No, she was hiding. I could feel something shifting, deep in my bones, the same instinct that had carried me through my husband's departure and every hardship since. The feeling that a storm was coming, and this time I wouldn't let it sweep me away. When I finally recovered enough to leave the hospital, I asked the nurse for copies of every paper I'd signed. She hesitated. Your daughter said she'd pick them up, she said. Did she? I smiled thinly. Well, I'm asking again, and this time I'm standing on my own 2 feet. They printed the documents. I stuffed them into my purse, my fingers trembling. Outside, the sky was gray and heavy, but I didn't care. I was done being in the dark. That's when the trap began, not hers, mine. When I reached Helen's house, I spread the papers across her kitchen table. We examined every line, every stamp. And there it was, the clause that gave Emily temporary authority to act on behalf of her mother during hospitalization. Helen gasped. That's how she did it. Yes, I whispered, but she forgot one thing. What's that? I pointed to the bottom of the page. It says temporary, and the expiration date, the day I was discharged. Helen's eyes widened. So after that, she had no right to sell anything. Exactly. I sat back, a slow smile forming. She built her entire plan on a deadline she didn't even read. I spent the next few days gathering proof. I visited the notary listed on the form, a young woman named Denise who remembered the signing. She came in with the papers already filled, Denise said. Said her mother couldn't make it and she was authorized to sign. She showed me the power of attorney letter and I just stamped it. Did you check identification? I asked. Denise looked nervous. Well, she had her own ID. I didn't realize. It's okay, I said gently. You'll just need to tell the court what happened. The color drained from her face. Court? Don't worry, I said. I'm not angry at you, but truth has a way of wanting to be told. Each night, I wrote everything down, dates, names, details. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was building a case, one careful note at a time. Helen called it obsession. I called it preparation, because I knew my daughter. Once she realized her plan was cracking, she'd come running, desperate to control the story. And when she did, I'd be ready. One afternoon, Helen peeked over my shoulder as I scribbled notes. "Martha," she said softly, "what will you do when this is over? When you get the house back?" I paused. "I'll do what mothers always do, Helen. I'll forgive her, but she'll never forget what it cost to earn it." That night, I dreamed of my house, the way the floorboards creaked under Tom's boots, the smell of pies cooling on the windowsill, the echo of Emily's laughter down the hallway. And when I woke up, I whispered to the dawn, "She took my house, but she can't take my name, and soon enough she'll learn what that name still means." There's a strange kind of silence that comes after betrayal, not the silence of peace, but of shock. It's the sound of a soul holding its breath. That's what I felt the morning I saw the moving trucks outside my old house. From Helen's porch, I watched strangers carrying boxes through the doorway I'd walked through thousands of times. A little girl ran across my lawn, the same lawn where Emily once chased fireflies. Her laughter cut through me like glass. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The white curtains I'd sewn by hand fluttered in the window. The for sale sign was gone, replaced by a bright brass mailbox with a new name, Carter. My home, my memories, belonged to someone else now. At least that's what Emily thought. Helen joined me on the porch, clutching 2 mugs of coffee. "You don't have to watch this," she said gently. "I do," I replied. "I need to see what she traded me for." We stood in silence for a long time, the smell of fresh paint drifting down the street. Finally, Helen spoke. "Did Carl say when the court hearing will be?" "Next month," I said. "The judge wants to review the deed and the power of attorney documents." "And Emily?" I smiled faintly. "She hasn't called, which means she's scared." 3 days later, I got a message. "Mom, we need to talk. Urgent." I almost didn't answer, but curiosity is a powerful thing. So I told her to come by Helen's. When she arrived, she looked different, the gloss of confidence replaced by the sweat of panic. "Mom," she started, pacing, "the buyers are threatening to back out. They said there's a dispute filed. What did you do?" I kept my face calm. "I defended what's mine," she groaned. "You're being ridiculous. You're ruining everything." "Everything," I repeated quietly. "You mean your quick sale? Your payday?" Her eyes darted away. "It wasn't like that." "Oh?" I said. "Then tell me what it was like. Tell me why you forged my name. Why you told strangers I wanted to sell my house when you knew I'd rather die in it." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "You don't understand, Mom. You're old. That house was falling apart. You couldn't keep up with it. I was trying to help you." "By stealing from me?" "I didn't steal," she shouted. "I saved you." Her voice cracked. "You were sick. You could have died. I thought if I sold it, I could take care of you. Put you somewhere safe." "Somewhere safe," I repeated, the words tasting bitter. "You mean somewhere small, somewhere quiet, somewhere you wouldn't have to be reminded that I still existed." For a moment she didn't speak. Then tears welled in her eyes, not of guilt, but of frustration. "You never see the big picture, Mom," she said. "You've always been stuck in that old house, clinging to the past. I just wanted to move forward." "By erasing me," I whispered. She shook her head, exasperated. "You're twisting everything. The buyer's already wired most of the money. It's done." "Not quite," I said softly. Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" I reached into the folder beside me and slid a paper across the table. "Property title dispute. Sale suspended." Her eyes widened. "What is this?" "It means," I said, that your buyers don't own that house. Not until the court decides who does. And since I never signed that deed, guess whose name is still on it?" She stared at me, speechless. "Mine," I said. "Just mine." For the first time, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not anger, not even fear. Shame. Real, raw shame. But it was fleeting. She straightened, forcing a smile. "You think you've won, but you haven't. Once the court sees that power of attorney, they'll side with me. You were sick, Mom? You didn't know what you were signing." "Oh, I knew what I signed," I said evenly. "I also know what you didn't, the expiration date. It ended the day I was discharged. You sold the house after that." Her mouth fell open. "That can't be—" "It is," I interrupted. "And I have witnesses. The nurse who released me, the notary who stamped the papers, the lawyer who handled my deed. Every one of them will tell the truth." She went pale. "You can't do this to me." "I didn't do this," I said quietly. "You did." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the ticking of Helen's kitchen clock. Finally, Emily whispered, "You hate me." I shook my head slowly. "No, I'm just done protecting you from the consequences of your choices." She turned away, her shoulders trembling. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I'll still have my name and my dignity." She left without another word, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the lights flicker in my old house across the street. The Carters were hosting a small gathering, laughing, talking, living their lives inside my memories. Helen joined me, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. "Are you all right?" "I will be," I said, "but I can't stop thinking, what happened to the girl I raised? How did we get here?" Helen sighed. "Sometimes love spoils before it breaks. You gave her everything, Martha. She just didn't know how to handle it." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. Maybe this is how she learns. The next morning, I visited the courthouse to finalize the complaint. As I walked through the old marble hallway, I felt strange, nervous but steady, like a soldier walking into battle not for victory, but for peace. Carl met me by the records office holding a thick folder. "We've got her cornered," he said. "The expiration clause makes her sale invalid. The buyers can sue her for fraud if they want to." "Do you think they will?" He smiled grimly. "They're already talking to their lawyer. They're furious. They'll want compensation." "From her?" "From her." I exhaled slowly. Then justice is finally knocking. Over the next few days, news spread like wildfire through Brooksville. Everyone knew what Emily had done. Some pitied her, others didn't hold back their judgment. The Carters filed a complaint, and suddenly Emily's perfect little world began to crumble. She called me in tears one night. "Mom, they're suing me. They're saying I defrauded them. I don't know what to do." I closed my eyes. "Tell the truth." "Please, Mom, I need help. I can't handle this alone." "You weren't alone when you planned this, were you?" I asked softly. Silence. Then a sob. "I'm sorry, Mom. I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Then make it right," I said. "Start by admitting what you did. To them, to me, to yourself." The next morning, Emily came to the courthouse with her lawyer. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of her choices had finally pressed down hard enough to crush her pride. When the judge called my name, I stood tall. My hands trembled slightly, but my voice did not. "I never authorized the sale," I said. "My daughter acted without legal right, and she knew it." The judge listened, asked questions, reviewed documents. When it was over, his words were clear. The sale of 214 Maple Street is hereby declared null and void. Ownership reverts fully to Mrs. Martha Jensen. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then tears spilled freely down my face. Outside the courtroom, Emily waited for me. Her lawyer had already left. She looked lost. "Mom," she whispered, "what happens now?" I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said, "Now, I go home." She flinched. "And me?" "That's up to you," I said. "You can start over, or you can keep running. But either way, I hope one day you find something worth more than money." She opened her mouth to reply, but I turned away before she could. When I reached my porch again, the porch I thought I'd never see as mine, I ran my hand along the railing, feeling the grooves, the paint worn smooth by time. I could almost hear Tom's laughter, smell the apple pie cooling by the window. Home. It wasn't just a word. It was a heartbeat that never stopped beating for me. Helen came over later with a pie and 2 forks. "You did it," she said, smiling. "You really did it." I nodded, gazing out at the sunset. "I didn't do it to win, Helen. I did it to remember who I am." She laughed softly. "Well, you reminded the whole town, too." I smiled, taking a bite of pie. "Good. Maybe someone else will think twice before signing away what truly matters." When I unlocked the front door of my house again, the sound that greeted me wasn't silence. It was a memory. The soft groan of the hinges, the faint echo of footsteps, the way the floorboards sighed as if saying, "Welcome back." I stood there in the doorway for a long time, just breathing it in. The air smelled different now, faintly of new paint and someone else's perfume, but underneath it lingered the scent of home, cedar, lemon polish, and the faintest trace of Tom's old aftershave. I ran my hand along the banister he'd carved himself, tracing the little nick where Emily had once crashed her toy car as a girl. My throat tightened. "So much has changed," I whispered, "and yet nothing at all." The Carters had been ordered to vacate within 10 days, and they'd left the place surprisingly clean. But still, there were ghosts of their short stay, a child's crayon mark on the wall, a few forgotten dishes, a photo nail still sticking out where someone else's memory had been hung. I walked through each room, touching everything like a blind woman rediscovering her own body. The kitchen, the heart of the house, gleamed. My old oven, the one Tom had insisted on fixing himself, still hummed softly when I turned it on. I laughed, the sound strange in the empty air. In the living room, the sunlight poured through the curtains I'd sewn decades ago. They were faded now, but they were mine. Every stitch was a piece of me. Upstairs, my bedroom felt untouched, like time had paused here, waiting for me to return. I sat on the edge of the bed, ran my hand over the quilt, and finally let myself cry. Later that evening, Helen arrived with her old pickup truck full of boxes. "Figured you might need a few things to make it feel like home again," she said, hauling in a lamp and a basket of linens. I smiled. "Helen, you've done enough already." "Nonsense," she said, plopping the lamp on a side table. "You've been through hell, Martha. Let me do something good for once." We unpacked in companionable silence, hanging curtains, setting up dishes, and laughing when we found the old ceramic rooster that used to sit above my stove. "Remember that Thanksgiving it fell on your head?" Helen chuckled. I grinned. "I still think you pushed it." She winked. "Maybe I did." For the first time in months, we laughed without bitterness. That night, when Helen left, I sat in the dark living room with a cup of tea and the soft tick of the old mantel clock. I should have felt victorious, but instead, I just felt empty. Winning back the house hadn't healed what was broken between me and Emily. I kept replaying her tear-streaked face in the courthouse hallway, the fear, the shame, the regret. I wanted to forgive her, but forgiveness is a heavy thing to carry when your heart is still bleeding. The next morning, while tidying the living room, I noticed something strange behind the old grandfather clock, a small draft of cool air. I moved the clock aside. It wasn't easy, but curiosity gave me strength. Behind it was a narrow wooden panel with a tiny metal hook. Tom had built this wall himself years ago. I'd forgotten about it completely. When I tugged the hook, the panel creaked open, revealing a shallow compartment. Inside, wrapped in a piece of faded linen, was a small tin box. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were two things: a folded letter, yellowed with age, a single old photograph of me, Tom, and a 6-year-old Emily in front of this very house. My heart squeezed. I unfolded the letter carefully. It was Tom's handwriting, neat, deliberate. My dearest Martha, if you ever find this, it means you're still here. And that's good. You were always the heart of this home. I wanted to leave you something, just in case life ever tried to take this place from you. The deed, the real one, is in my name and yours, not just yours alone. I did that so no one could ever sell this house without both signatures. If Emily ever grows up to forget what family means, remind her that roots don't get stronger by cutting down the tree. Take care of yourself, love. And remember, this house isn't just wood and brick. It's us. Tears fell onto the paper, blurring his handwriting. I whispered, "Oh, Tom, you old fool. You always did think ahead." That letter changed something in me. It wasn't just about winning back the property anymore. It was about reclaiming the story of who we were, of what we built. So that afternoon, I went to the Old Town Library and made copies of Tom's letter and the deed. I wanted them preserved, not as evidence, but as history. As I left the library, I ran into someone I hadn't expected. Emily. She looked worn out, pale, thinner than before, her eyes hollow. "Mom," she said quietly, "can we talk?" I hesitated but nodded. "All right." We walked to the park across from the courthouse, the same park where she used to play as a child. The wind was cool, rustling through the trees. She sat on the bench, hands twisting nervously in her lap. "I've been trying to figure out what to say. I know sorry isn't enough." I stayed quiet. "I lost everything," she continued. "My job, my friends, my reputation. Everyone in town knows what I did. I thought I was helping you, but I was just ashamed. I didn't want people to see how hard things had gotten." Her voice broke. I wanted to feel in control, like I could fix something, but all I did was destroy the one person who ever truly loved me. I felt tears rising again. "You didn't destroy me, Emily. You hurt me, yes, but you didn't destroy me. You only made me remember who I am." She looked up, eyes glistening. "Can you ever forgive me?" I took a long breath. "I don't know yet, but I can start by listening." We sat there for a long time, the silence between us no longer sharp but heavy, like soil ready for planting. Finally, I reached into my bag and handed her Tom's letter. "Your father wrote this before he died. I found it hidden in the wall." She unfolded it, reading silently. I watched her face soften, then crumble. She clutched the paper to her chest. "He knew, didn't he? He knew I'd lose my way." I nodded. He also knew we'd find each other again. Somehow. She started to cry. Really cry. The kind of sobs that shake the body free of pride. I pulled her into my arms, and for the first time in years, she didn't resist. When we finally parted, the sun was setting over the park. "I want to make things right," she said softly. "If you'll let me." I smiled faintly. "That's a start." She nodded. Maybe I can help you fix the house, like old times. I looked at her, at my daughter, fragile but human again, and said, let's see where that road leads. A few weeks later, the house began to hum with life again. Emily helped repaint the porch, repair the garden fence, and plant marigolds along the walkway. We didn't talk much at first, but the silence was healing. Sometimes she'd pause and look at me, as if afraid I might send her away again. But I never did. One evening, she stood in the doorway, wiping her hands on her jeans. You know, she said, I used to think this house was a burden, but now I see it was the one thing that held us together. I smiled. It always was. That night I found her sitting in the living room, staring at the old photograph of the three of us. She said quietly, Dad would have been proud of you. I looked at her. No, sweetheart. He'd have been proud of us for finding our way home. For a few weeks, peace settled over the house like a soft blanket. The air no longer felt heavy, the silence no longer stung. But peace has a price, and sometimes that price comes in the form of what you owe to the world. Emily was learning that the hard way. One morning, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, her phone in her hand, eyes red from crying. They won't stop calling, she whispered. The Carter's lawyer, the real estate board, the bank. I sat down across from her. What are they saying? They want repayment, damages, everything. I could lose my apartment, Mom. I don't have that kind of money. I sipped my coffee slowly. Actions have echoes, Emily. You can't pretend not to hear them. I know, she said, voice breaking, but I don't know what to do anymore. I looked at her carefully. Then it's time to do what you should have done from the start. Take responsibility. She lifted her head. How? Go to them. Face them. Tell them the truth. Her eyes widened. Mom, they'll destroy me. I shook my head. No, they'll respect you more for standing tall than for running away. It took her 3 days to gather the courage. When she finally did, I went with her. Not as her shield, but as her witness. The Carters were waiting in the courthouse lobby, stone-faced and silent. Emily's hands trembled as she approached them. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, she said softly. I'm sorry. I misled you. I told you I had the right to sell that house, but I didn't. It was mine only in my imagination. Mrs. Carter's expression softened. We were angry, Emily, but we can see you're trying to make this right. Mr. Carter crossed his arms. Angry doesn't cover it. You cost us months of time, money, and stress. What makes you think sorry fixes that? Emily swallowed hard. It doesn't. But I want to make amends. I'll repay you, even if it takes me years. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mrs. Carter sighed. Maybe that's punishment enough. Mr. Carter gave a small nod. We'll withdraw the lawsuit once we're reimbursed for our expenses, but don't think we're doing it for pity. We're doing it because we see you're finally facing the truth. Tears slid down Emily's cheeks. Thank you. I don't deserve it, but thank you. On the way home, she sat silently beside me. At a red light, she whispered, Why did you come with me, Mom? After everything I did, why didn't you let me fall alone? I looked at her and said softly, Because justice isn't about watching someone drown. It's about making sure they learn how to swim again. In the following weeks, Emily began to rebuild her life, slowly, painfully, but with purpose. She took a job at the local diner, working long hours and saving every penny. People in town whispered at first about the girl who sold her mother's house behind her back. But she didn't hide from it. She faced it head-on. I watched her from a distance, proud but cautious. Sometimes she'd stop by after her shift, bringing me a slice of pie or a bunch of daisies from the diner's counter vase. One evening, as we sat on the porch together, she asked, "Do you think people will ever forgive me?" I smiled gently. "Forgiveness is like spring, Emily. It doesn't come when you demand it. It comes when you've weathered the winter long enough to deserve it." Not long after, an envelope arrived in the mail. It was from the local paper, the Brooksville Gazette. Inside was a letter addressed to me. "Mrs. Jensen, we've heard about your story, the house, the betrayal, and the remarkable outcome. We'd like to feature you in our upcoming issue about resilience in our community. Would you consider an interview?" I laughed when I read it. Me? A story in the newspaper? But then I thought, maybe there was value in telling it. Not for fame, but as a lesson. When the reporter came by, I told her everything: the hospital, the forged papers, the trial, the redemption. At the end, she asked, "If you could say one thing to your daughter through this article, what would it be?" I looked straight into her eyes and said, "That love is not ownership. It's stewardship. You can't sell what someone else's heart is built into." A week later, the story hit the front page. "Mother wins back family home after daughter's deceit. A lesson in forgiveness and strength." It spread faster than wildfire. People from neighboring towns came by, some to shake my hand, others just to say how much it touched them. Emily, however, stayed quiet. One evening, she brought me the newspaper clipping, neatly folded. "They made you sound like a saint," she said with a small smile. I chuckled. "They made me sound old, which is worse." She laughed, a real, genuine laugh, the first I'd heard in years. Then she said softly, "You deserved it, though. You never gave up, even when I made you hate me." I looked at her, eyes gentle. "I never hated you, Emily. I just waited for you to remember who you are." But poetic justice wasn't done yet. A few days later, the same newspaper reached out again, this time to Emily. They wanted her side of the story. At first, she refused, but I told her, "If you want people to see how far you've come, let them hear it in your voice." So she agreed. When her article came out, the headline read, "I sold my mother's house, and it cost me everything." She wrote, "I thought I was helping her, but really I was trying to erase my own guilt. My mother didn't just get her house back, she got her dignity back. And through her, I learned that love can forgive, but it never forgets its lessons." The article went viral online. People called it heartbreaking but beautiful. Suddenly, our story wasn't just a small-town scandal anymore. It became a symbol, a story of betrayal, justice, and grace. One evening, as we sat by the porch watching fireflies, Emily said quietly, "You know what's funny? I used to think losing that house ruined my life, but maybe it saved it." I smiled. "Funny how life works, isn't it?" She nodded. "I've started looking into real estate law. I want to study it. Maybe one day I can help people who almost lose what they love." I turned to her, surprised. That's a good idea, sweetheart." She looked out toward the horizon. "It's the least I can do." Later that night, after she'd gone home, I stood by the window and watched the moonlight spill across the porch. Justice had come, not in a storm, but in a steady rain that washed everything clean. Tom's words echoed in my mind. "If she ever forgets what family means, remind her that roots don't get stronger by cutting down the tree." He was right. Our roots were still there, scarred, tangled, but alive. And sometimes that's enough. A few weeks later, a small letter arrived from the courthouse. Inside was a check, reimbursement from the Carters covering the portion Emily had already repaid. The note attached read, "Mrs. Jensen, "We wanted to thank you for your grace through all this. Your daughter's apology was sincere. Please accept this gesture and our best wishes." I smiled softly. Then, instead of keeping the money, I gave it to Emily. She looked shocked. "Mom, no, I can't." "Yes, you can," I said. "Use it to start that law course. Let something good grow from what was broken." Her eyes filled with tears. "You're really giving me another chance?" I took her hand. "Everyone deserves one, even when they've already had too many." From that day on, things slowly began to change. Emily worked 2 jobs, studied in the evenings, and never once complained. People stopped whispering when she walked by. They smiled instead. As for me, I spent my mornings tending the garden, my afternoons on the porch, and my nights talking to Tom's memory. I told him about the letter, the forgiveness, the way Emily was becoming someone he would have been proud of. And though the air was still, I could almost hear his voice in the rustle of the leaves. "You did good, Martha. You both did." When I finally walked through the gates of my house again, the late autumn wind carried the scent of maple and dust, the kind of smell that comes only when seasons are changing, when things are both dying and coming back to life. My name was still on that deed, and now so was my strength. The first time I turned the doorknob again, I didn't cry. Not like I expected to. Instead, I took a long breath, letting the air of my home, fill my lungs. Every corner had been touched, changed, rearranged by the people who had moved in after Lily's sale fell apart. But under the new paint, I could still see my fingerprints on the walls, marks from the years I raised my daughter here. And even though the bank and lawyers helped me win the legal fight, I knew what truly mattered wasn't the paperwork. It was the principle. Because a mother's love might bend, but it doesn't break. And a woman's dignity might fall quiet for a while, but it doesn't vanish. The court had ruled in my favor 2 weeks earlier. Apparently, the buyer, a developer named Henry Bishop, had grown tired of waiting after the sale was declared void. He wanted nothing to do with the dispute. So, once the title reverted to me, I decided not to sell. Not this time. I repaired what needed mending, not just in the walls, but in myself. The old creaky floors? I left them. The uneven porch? I kept it. The faded wallpaper? I patched the tears, not to hide them, but to remember them. This home had scars. So did I, but scars meant survival, proof that we made it through something that tried to destroy us. One afternoon, as I was tending to my roses in the front yard, a car pulled up. I didn't need to see who it was. I felt her before I heard her. "Mom." Lily's voice was softer this time. Not weak, just stripped of arrogance. She stepped out of her car, her once perfect hair now tied up, her eyes swollen from nights of crying. For a long moment we stood there, separated by a low wooden fence that had never looked so tall. I didn't rush to speak. I just kept pruning the roses, one thorn at a time. She finally broke the silence. "I'm sorry, Mom. I thought I was doing what was best. I stopped her gently. "No, sweetheart," I said, keeping my eyes on the flowers. "You thought about yourself, and you thought I was too weak to notice." She flinched. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I lost everything," she whispered. "Daniel left. I lost my job, and I don't have anywhere to go." The same daughter who once sold my house as if it were her birthright now stood in front of me, homeless in more ways than one. I looked up at her, studying the face I had loved for 50 years, the same face that had once smiled when she took her first steps in this very yard. "Lily," I said softly, "this house taught me something. You can lose everything, money, comfort, pride, But if you lose your conscience, you lose your soul. You forgot who you were. Maybe it's time you remember." She sobbed openly then, falling to her knees beside the fence. "Please, please forgive me, Mom. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was scared. I thought I'd lose everything if I didn't sell it." I set down my pruning shears and sighed. Then maybe losing everything is what you needed to see what really matters. I didn't open the gate right away. I needed her to feel the weight of what she'd done, not out of cruelty, but out of love. Sometimes a heart must be broken before it can grow again. Finally, I said, "Get up, child. You look cold." She blinked, confused. "Come in," I said, nodding toward the porch. "Not to stay, but to help me clean up. You owe this house that much." She hesitated, then followed. We spent the next few days repairing the porch together, not talking much, just working. The silence between us was thick but necessary. Every nail she hammered was an apology, every board she fixed a confession. By the time the sun set on the third day, she turned to me, her hands blistered and eyes heavy. "I never knew it was this hard to build something back once it's broken," she murmured. I smiled faintly. "That's the point, Lily. Some lessons you can't buy. You have to earn them." A week later, she came to me with something small in her hand. It was the house key, the one she had kept after she sold the place, perhaps out of guilt or memory. She held it out, trembling. "This belongs to you." I looked at the key, then at her. "No," I said quietly. "It belongs to us. But you'll have to prove you deserve to hold it again." Her eyes widened in surprise. "You mean—" "I mean you can come back," I said, "not as my daughter who betrayed me, but as the woman who learned what her mother always wanted her to know, that family is worth more than any house, and that love without respect is nothing." She nodded, tears streaming freely now. Months passed. Slowly, Lily found a small job at the local library. She began volunteering at the town's food drive, something I never thought I'd see. And though she still lived in a small apartment across town, she came every Sunday for tea, bringing fresh flowers for the porch she helped rebuild. I never said, "I forgive you." I didn't need to. Some forgiveness is spoken through actions, a cup of tea poured, a porch repaired, a heart reopened. One quiet evening, as I sat by the window watching the sunset burn gold over the rooftops, I thought about everything that had happened. The house, once nearly lost, stood tall again, not perfect but strong, just like me. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. This house wasn't just wood and nails, it was a mirror, reflecting the truth that when you build your life on love and integrity, no one can sell it out from under you, not even your own blood. A month later, I signed a new will. It didn't leave the house to Lily, not directly. Instead, it created a trust. The home would remain in our family, protected, untouchable, as long as the generations who lived here remembered why it mattered. When I finished signing, I placed the pen down and whispered, "This isn't just my legacy, it's our redemption." That night, Lily stopped by after work. She stood at the door, hesitant, holding a bouquet of white lilies, her namesake. "For the garden," she said softly. I smiled and took them. "They'll bloom beautifully here, just like you did." She laughed weakly. "You think I bloomed?" "You did," I said, my voice warm. "Even flowers need storms to grow." As the evening deepened and fireflies began to dance in the yard, Lily leaned her head on my shoulder. "I used to think you were so stubborn," she whispered. "I am," I replied, smiling. "That's how we survive." When she left that night, I stood at the doorway long after she drove off, the sound of her car fading down the road. Then I whispered to the empty street, "This house saw betrayal, but it also saw redemption. And maybe that's what makes it a home." Sometimes life takes everything from you, not to punish you, but to show you what truly matters. A house can be sold, but a heart cannot. And when justice finds its way back to you, it's not revenge, it's simply peace returning home.